I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Arakwal people of the Bundjalung Nation, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Are you ready to win at the game of life? Well, throw out that rulebook and get down to the business of being the best and most authentic version of you. Welcome to the Human Design Podcast. We're changing the rules around success, abundance, purpose, love, and life, where we're creating a planet where everyone can thrive in a world that loves and supports each other. I'm your host, Emma Dunwoody, a qualified master coach, human design expert, podcaster, and entrepreneur that is living the life of my dreams, breaking all the rules while doing it, making a huge impact, and living my design and manifesting miracles on the daily. Join me as I break down and simplify everything you need to live in alignment with your human design, teach you how to recondition your unconscious mind for greatness, and to take back your power so you can manifest your heaven on earth and serve the rest of the planet at the same time. It's time to give up the fear and step into your highest potential, to reach for the stars, to know and live your greatness. It's what you deserve, and it's what the planet really needs from you. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Hey, and welcome to today's episode. I'm really excited to share with you today. One of our members of HDX actually reached out to me and asked me a very specific question. And basically, to sum it up, and I'm going to go into a lot of detail, is how can I tell if this is my sacral or not? Now, I'm going to go into this a little bit deeper. I'm going to talk about authority. Yes, I'm going to specifically talk to the sacral, but I want you to understand that this is the same for all authorities, okay? So the challenge that Lizzie from HDX has had is that because in the past she had a lot of trauma, she finds it challenging to really know the specific difference between her sacral and perhaps other people's energy, trauma responses, all of these sort of things. Now, I'm going to break it down a little bit before I even get to the answer to this question. The first thing to understand is when we have something traumatic happen, the reason we actually experience trauma from it is because we have a trapped emotion. It's an emotion that didn't feel safe to express in the moment. And that is what creates the trauma loop that we then live in. So we either live in it very consciously or we suppress it really deeply and almost have a very deep, almost avoidance strategy to it. So trauma at the end of the day is the body's answer to not having to feel something. So whenever we're dealing with trauma, we will often find it a little bit more challenging to know how our authority feels, and as what Lizzie brings up as well, and really starting to differentiate between, well, is this my energy? Is this someone else's energy? If you're a projector, reflector, manifester, is this my energy or is this somebody else's energy that's being amplified in me? And Lizzie also only has two defined centers. So again, it's this, how do I navigate between, okay, this definition of energy that lies within me and then this energy that I amplify in my body? Because oftentimes, if you think about, your body is trying to keep that emotion from being processed because that trauma at the time was too much for you to handle. It's trying to keep it suppressed. And then you come along, get in aura with someone else, and all of a sudden you're amplifying and reflecting back their energy. Well, that's feeling even bigger than your energy, right? So of course it's going to trigger your potential trauma responses, and then the mind is going to get involved. The conscious mind is going to be like, well, how do I tell the freaking difference? How do I know when it's my sacral? How do I know when it's my undefined centers? It's someone else's energy. How do I know when it's just my energy? So it's really important to understand that when we talk about our authority, and I've done a podcast on authorities, all the authorities specifically, and I've interviewed people specifically on each authority. So there's lots of information for you to dive into your specific authority. But what I want you to understand is that ultimately it's about clearing the pathway to connect to the authority and simultaneously at the same time acting as if, because your authority is already working. It's already doing its thing. So sorry if you're listening on. I had a bit of a technical issue. The sound will hopefully be a little bit better now. Okay, so at the end of the day, it's really important to understand that you've already been experiencing your authority. Okay, but I want you to imagine that maybe you've been listening and being guided by your authority just with the volume turned quite low. All right, so it's understanding first that it's already happening, two, that you have a volume dial, and three, that you can turn that dial up. So ultimately, the first step is really showing your brain, giving your mind evidence that it's actually safe to feel. This is a large part of the journey when it comes to authority, because every single human, bar a very, very few, have trauma. Because trauma is something that can be, I'm not a big fan of the whole big T trauma versus little t trauma, because it kind of makes one worse than the other. And yes, to our conscious adult minds, it's a lot more traumatic to be experience sexual abuse as opposed to maybe losing a toy as a child. Like, absolutely, to the conscious grown-up mind, those two things don't compare. However, to our brain, to our unconscious mind, to our inner child, to the part of us that is actually keeping us in the trauma loop, there isn't a difference. Trauma is trauma is trauma. It's a trapped emotion, and it's the brain saying it's not safe to feel that. I don't want to feel it. So we have to actually start to show the body that it's okay, that it's safe to feel. So we want to start with those things that, like, I often, whatever the subject is, I'm like, start small and with the things that seemingly don't really matter. So what do I mean by that? Well, notice when you get in the shower how the water feels on your skin, because you're already in your body, you're feeling it. Yep, you might be completely distracted. I absolutely fall into that category sometimes. I literally don't know if I have washed my face or my body or my hair because I'm so distracted by whatever's going through my mind. So it's those little things that we can start to just come back to and practice presence. This is how we really get back into the body. Notice when we're brushing our teeth, how it feels. Notice when we're washing our hands, how it feels. Because it's as simple as this. This is how easy it is to get back into our body. We presuppose that when we have trauma, that we are never in the body, that we're like, no, I just shut that shit down. I'm not going anywhere near it. But it's not true. Like, if you burn your hand, you're going to feel it. Now, again, there is a volume dial on that. And I know I've shared on the podcast in the past where when I broke my arm as a child, I didn't feel it at all. I had the ability to shut off feeling to a very significant degree. And in hindsight, I know that had a lot to do with the trauma that I experienced via my undefined spleen, because I was always amplifying the pain that everyone else was feeling. And that was so traumatic for me. So I got to that point where I would just block out the pain altogether. Now, if I blocked out the pain, or if you're blocking out the trauma or the pain or whatever, the emotion, well, what's important for you to understand is that you block out that stuff as well as the more resourceful stuff. And because we're on the topic of authority, that's what I'm going to talk about today. It's going to stop us feeling our authority. It's going to keep that volume turned down. So we want to practice in as many ways as we possibly can, just noticing when we're in the body. Noticing specifically for Lizzie when you feel lit up. Now, the mind goes straight to, well, I don't know what lights me up these days because, is it this? Is it that? I don't know. I'm in this liminal space in my life, because the brain goes straight to these big things, like a big job or a big business break or a new relationship. But what if we just start with the little things? Like, I know for me, the moment I open the cupboard and I see a Loco Love chocolate, I'm like, there's my sacral, I'm in. So practicing the sacral response with the little things, okay? Starting to understand that it's going to be a feeling of really deeply innate within you. And if sacral authority is your authority, it's going to feel really consistent, right? Your sacral authority is going to show up the same way all the time. Whereas if you're dealing with someone else's energy, it's going to feel inconsistent. You're going to kind of feel like, well, I had this energy when I was with this person, but now this energy is not there. So it's really starting to notice the consistent energy of your authority. And if you have a sounding board authority, which that's like ego authority, self-directed authority, mental authority, no authority for the reflector. So even the way you soundboard, there's going to be some real consistency, like what you focus on. And again, it's going to be determined on the details of your design and what actually plugs in that authority. So what you want to pay attention to is those consistencies, because they're really reliable. When you're amplifying and reflecting back someone else's energy, it's inconsistent and it's unreliable. Okay, so it's not always going to be there. So it's how you can kind of tell the difference between the two straight off the bat. So ultimately, it's all about running the experiment. So learn the knowledge, then go into experimentation. So start experimenting with it. Make sure you're recording your results, like what's working, what isn't working, what's consistent, what's inconsistent. How does it feel when you're with someone? Let's say, we know in Lizzie's case, if she's a sacral authority, that she's got an undefined solar plexus. Then, whenever she comes into aura with someone else that she knows has a defined solar plexus, how does that specifically feel different? And it's all about recording it. It's about writing it down in your journal, like finding the consistencies, finding the patterns. You also need to be very aware that these things have always been active in you. Just because the mind doesn't have clarity doesn't mean it's not working. All right. It just means the mind doesn't have clarity. And the mind isn't making the decisions, the body is. So what if you could sit in the uncertainty of, well, I don't know exactly how it works, but I know when I know, and start building that muscle. I know that was one of the big leaps that I did that I took with my authority, that I know when I know. So starting to act and pick up the belief that I'm already being guided by my authority. I consciously will, in this context, respond when the sacral is a yes. Now, will I consciously know it's a sacral yes all the time? No, especially the more unconsciously competent that you get, because the learning cycle that we go on, right? We start, whenever we learn something, we're unconsciously incompetent. That means we have no idea what we don't know. Then we move to conscious incompetence. And that's the moment that most of us freak out, because we're like, oh my God, I'm all of a sudden conscious of all the things I don't know. Then we move to conscious competence. So we're learning, we're running the experiment, we're doing the thing, and all of a sudden we're conscious of what we do know and what we don't know. And we're also conscious that we're starting to build expertise on whatever this thing is, right? And then ultimately we end up at this place of unconscious competence. And that's the place where, in many cases, we're much closer to that with our sacral authority, or any authority, than we give ourselves credit for, because we're so unconscious to it. We've mastered this thing so much that we're almost not aware of it. Now, most people in their human design journey, they don't like all of a sudden become aware of their authority and realize that they're in unconscious competence. That's not really it. They usually wake up around conscious incompetence, where they're like, oh my God, I suddenly realize all the things I don't know. But there's already this unconscious, your authority is already doing its thing. We just want to turn up the dial. We want to turn up the volume. We want to get it clearer. So anytime that you feel really overwhelmed, like, oh my God, is it my authority or is it something else? Then just step away from it. It's almost like, okay, well, I don't need that answer. I'm just going to put it down, because it's in the needing the answer. What that tells us is that the mind is looking for clarity. It wants to be in control. Why does it want to be in control? Because it needs to control its external reality to feel safe. However, when we are fully aligned to our design and our authority, it means we have internal certainty. What does internal certainty mean? We want internal certainty versus external control. We want internal certainty because that means I don't know. I don't know where I'm going or what the right next step is, or where exactly I'm headed to. But what I do know is whatever comes my way, I can handle it. What I do know is that the universe only delivers me things that I can handle. What I do know is that I am more in alignment than I even realize. And this is the place that we want to be operating from, because at the end of the day, even with sacral authority, because I hear this all the time, even with sacral authority, which is the easiest authority to have clear clarity around, we don't have clarity because the mind jumps in, right? We have clarity in that moment, a sacral, like in the moment, just listen to it. That's it. Just follow that. but it's the mind that overcomplicates it. But did it feel a little bit more like this, or did it feel, I'm not sure. So it's that moment that the mind starts to get involved that removes the clarity. So whenever we get to that point where we're like, oh my God, is it this or is it that? And we've overthought it, we just need to put it down and step away. We're too close to the project, as I would say. And being too close to the project means you're too close to yourself. You're too close to trying to work out your authority instead of just living in alignment with your authority, meaning you're just responding as a sacral being. That's all you got to do. Just respond. The things to kind of be aware of, though, is I love this question. She asked this beautiful question. And even in asking this question, she answered the question herself, because she is someone who, and a lot of this, I feel like she's also answered, but I just wanted to really confirm that this is really what we're looking for. But often this is something I hear around authority. Like, is this okay? Is this correct? Am I doing it right? And I want you to understand is you can't do it wrong. You can do it with the volume turned down. You can override it with the mind. Is that correct? Well, no. In a perfect world, we don't want to override it with the mind, and we don't want to have it on low. But is it wrong? Is it okay? It's not wrong, and it's fine that you are where you're at. So it's all about, okay, well, what is working? What is going in my favor? And this is why it's so important to record our results, because we have to give the brain evidence. It's like, right, I'm heading in the right direction. Yes, of course, I know my sacral, because what's going to happen, and I would say my guess is with Lizzie, because I do know Lizzie quite well from HDX, I would guess is that 95% of the time she's listening to her authority, but her brain, her reticular activating system, is focused on the 5% where she's not sure if she's following her sacral, which I think is the same for so many people. That's, again, our negativity bias. That's the default setting in our brain. It's going to focus on what we don't want, what we perceive we're getting wrong, what's the problem, what's the danger, instead of the 95% that actually she is listening to her sacral and is just responding and like, yeah, this is so easy. This is easy. This is easy. So at the end of the day, really make sure that you're focusing on the times that you're in alignment with your authority. Learn the lessons from the moments that you aren't. So when you go against it, you make a decision and, maybe something blows up in your face, or you don't get what you want, or whatever it is, pay attention, learn the lesson, and keep going, focusing on the wins, not the losses. Okay. So you're winning or learning, remember? Okay. I'm going to finish up this episode by giving you 3 things to know and 3 things to do. So the first thing you need to know is you're already feeling your body. Okay. So practice small things every day so that you can feel your body. Number 2, your authority is already guiding you. When you hold this belief close, my authority is already guiding me, it presupposes you're already listening to it. You're already in alignment with it. It's already the wisdom that is causing you to walk this line of authenticity. So make sure you have that resourceful focus and belief. It's already working within you. You're already doing it. The third thing to know is you're thinking your authority. So whenever we get to that confused place, is this correct? Is this right? Is that, hang on a second. I'm asking questions. Therefore, I'm thinking. Therefore, I'm in my mind. I'm not in my authority. I'm not in my body. So just pay attention. I actually have, a noting system that I will say, words, just words. For those that know me well, and I think I just mentioned it recently on the mastermind, I also have a stop button. So when my mind goes somewhere that starts telling, unresourceful stories, I'm just like, stop. Or if I start saying something in my mind, I'm like, just words. They're not important to me. So really be conscious, okay, am I feeling my authority? Am I thinking my authority? Because the moment there's lots of words around your authority, you're thinking it, not feeling it. Even for those who have a sounding board authority, you're not thinking the words, you're speaking the words. And then you're hearing what's coming out of your mouth. And it's in that loop that you're like, oh, that makes sense. It's not you thinking over things. Okay, 3 things that I want you to do. Number 1, you must record how things feel and the results that you're getting. You need to give the brain evidence that it is safe to feel your feelings, to feel your authority, to feel your emotions. Number 2, you got to act as if you're already tuned in with it, that you're already listening to it. When you go to that place, remember the unconscious mind doesn't see the world through your eyes. It sees the world through your imagination, through your programs, your beliefs, your identity, your values, your attitudes. So it's really important. If you act as if you already live in alignment with your authority and you're just at the fine tuning stage, then that's where you will be. You just need to practice it. And every time the mind says, no, you're not, you don't know, you're confused, you're like, that's just words. Stop. And then the third thing to do is to take time daily to prove to your brain that you can feel your authority. As I said, that could be as simple as standing in the shower and feeling the water on your body. That could be as simple as sitting with your partner or your friend and just being completely present and listening to what they have to say. Because that's, again, you going to be in your body, right? Watching your body respond to someone else speaking. It could be running. It could be putting a cushion or having your cat or your dog sit on your lap. Like, just notice how it feels. Notice, that good old meditation one. Notice how the breath feels coming in and out of the body. There are so many ways that you're feeling your body right now in this moment. Like right now. Like, I can feel my fringe on my forehead. There you go. I'm in my body. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't think it has to be this, lightning and thunder or streamers and bands. Like, it doesn't have to be this big, massive thing. It's subtle. Subtle energy is subtle energy, right? So the body is that subtle energy field. So pay attention to the subtle energy just as much as the big energy. And that's especially for my MG and my manifestor friends out there, because I always thought it was going to be big and obvious. However, what I have learned is that it is not, and it doesn't ever have to be big and obvious, because in the moments where you really connect with that subtle energy, whatever it is, it's like, wow, that is big and obvious, but it's subtle at the same time. So I trust that answers your question. I trust that everyone got what they needed from today's episode. I absolutely love doing these for you guys. I'm just about to step into retreat here in Byron Bay with a group of incredible humans, which I'm so excited about. And and then it's on to an incredibly exciting masterclass that we're going to be running on the 2nd of November. So stay tuned for more information. Love you lots. Thanks for being here, and I look forward to having you on the next podcast. Bye for now. Thanks everyone for being here all the way to the end of the podcast. I hope you got lots of value out of it. I certainly had a lot of fun doing it. Could I please ask that you share this podcast with friends if you found it valuable? And also, bonus points, could you leave a review for me as well on Apple? It would be greatly appreciated. If at any point you would like to be on the podcast, or you've got questions that you'd like me to discuss on the podcast, by all means get on my socials and DM me. Everything you need is there in the show notes. Have an awesome day. Bye for now.